Hi Tracy, how are you?
Hello, Kate. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, good. Can't believe it's a whole week since we last chatted. Where has that week gone? My goodness, we're now into week 3 of lockdown, I think.
I think I've lost track, to be honest, but it's definitely a week since we spoke.
So, what's been happening for you in the last week as a happy brain coach and a coach and trainer in your own right? What kind of things have you been up to?
It's been a real mixture, actually. Busy in that I have been taking a lot of time out to look at IT, I think like most people right now. So commissioned somebody to do some work on my website and, kind of exploring all of those options, which feels really good actually, because that's been in my to-do box since forever. For me personally, it's been a really interesting week. By last weekend, I was finding the world a bit of a strange place. I think, like many people who listen to this, they'll agree it's a bit of a strange place. And I was struggling a little bit to keep up, if I'm honest. And from a business sense, I think, really, where I've seen a lot of stuff go out, particularly online, because we're spending our lives online right now, even more than we used to do, where there was stuff about, do this or buy that or make it look like this or, dig deeper, go bigger, etc., which I completely understand in marketing terms, because we've kind of got to stay on people's radar. I completely get that is so not my style. And it kind of reminded me of when people are in situations or find themselves either in jobs or in family situations or even friendship groups, anywhere where they're having to try and be or do something that they're not, and how uncomfortable it starts to feel. And so I kind of woke up Saturday morning and thought, I have to change this. I need to do something different. I'm fairly confident this, in whatever guise this pandemic and how we're having to deal with it's probably going to be around for a little while. And there was no way I could keep up that pace. There was no way I could keep up that franticness. And when I look back at the things like actually not sleeping that well, that feeling of, when you've had too much coffee, that kind of switched on feeling all the time. And I was able over the weekend to just have a bit of a reset, and I've been even more productive this week. That feels so much better. It feels like what I'm doing now fits. And I think the biggest lesson so far out of everything that we've had to do has been about whatever you do it congruently, do it in your way. And that doesn't mean to say that you can't be quicker or whatever that looks like, but stay true, because anything else eventually over the long term really has room to make us quite ill. And that's what I've been seeing amongst many colleagues and clients I've spoken to. And I think it's probably a shared experience, although not everybody will come to it at the same time. I do think it's probably going to be a shared experience. And bearing in mind, we probably need to be tortoises, not hares right now, and just take a minute. Well, that strategy works for me anyway.
Do you know what? Thank you for sharing that. I think what it reminds me of is your ability to recognise your own signals and what you needed, and not only what you needed to do as a primary action, but then, you know, subsequently. I think resilience again is the big word that we keep referring to in our work, especially right now. And it reminds me of in Happy Brain, we talk about being on a seesaw, and whatever happens, bringing ourselves back to that center point. It's as if you can stand on the fulcrum and choose which way to go, but coming back to the center point is really important. But knowing where you're at in order to take action to bring yourself back to center point is also really important, isn't it? And it sounds like, you know, well done you for, well, of course you have the skills, but even people who are highly skilled don't always listen to their inner wisdom and what their bodies are saying. So yeah, that's really quite a stark thing, isn't it? And I've heard from a number of colleagues who are super skilled, just like yourself, who are taking time at the moment to have a bit of, we might call it downtime or something, but it is that reset, rebalance. And it reminds me of in one of the models that we use in Happy Brain, but the bit about thriving is either a series of outward actions or inward nourishment and nurturing. And I think you're describing really, really well what you needed to do to nourish. What kind of things were you doing when you were having time out? What nourishes you?
Well, as I you know, fully subscribed member of the Introversion Club, switching off social media completely, and really just, I wouldn't say pretending the outside world wasn't there, but definitely putting up some boundaries and saying, you're not coming in here. This is my space and I don't want the intrusion. So my new routine is I only listen to the news once a day, kind of after dinner.
Right.
I might have the radio on during the day, but I can quite easily zone that out. In fact, I haven't had it on at all today, first thing, but not since then. So just listen to the news once a day. Reading stuff, not novels, but sort of educational stuff, which is great. Writing has to be just the best thing right now. And I'm not writing a novel or anything like that, but sort of, I suppose, writing. Am I writing for an audience? Maybe. I do share stuff, but just I feel like I use writing to explore stuff. So just saying, no to the outside world and really focusing on that. And I feel like I've still been as productive, probably more productive this week, really. Sleeping better. Oh, just what a difference. And what's interesting is you're saying, kind of some people are taking time out and doing other things. It was even the instruction that I should take time out right now, that use this time that just made me know, well, okay, I might, but you don't need to tell me to do that. I can decide that for myself. So a little bit of rebel came out, a little rebellion.
Polarity responding. Well done, Tracey. Go for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think they're my go-to things. Obviously, they're different for everybody. But yeah, I'm just recognizing my personality type in that as well.
Yeah. I was thinking, as you were telling me about, your wake up and sudden awareness of what you wanted to drop off. And I guess I had a very similar mirroring experience, maybe not as expansive as yours, but I definitely woke up on Saturday morning with a surety that there was one thing that I could take out of my life right now, one thing that was demanding quite a lot of my attention and energy, and it was easy to pull back from it. And so I've just made the decision, and I didn't have to even think about it. It was just like, you know what, I'm going to buy myself back a few hours here that I want to spend in a different way. After that.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, how did you know that?
I guess somewhere in my subconscious or slightly conscious internal conversation, I probably was asking the question about, you know, what's the value of the thing that I am doing? You know, what are the gains? What are the losses? You know, what's the investment worth to me? And I think somewhere in a couple of conversations I've had with others this week, it's been around our values are shifting greatly at the moment, and things that were really important to us right now seem to be changing. So I guess I'd preset some of those thinking frames, if you like, about doing a little kind of, I imagine that you know, the little people in my head going around going, yes, no, yeah, yes, you know, and the measurement is something to do with the finite amount of energy that I have, attention and energy to do all the things that I want to do. And this is a very challenging time for us all, but it's also a very exciting time. I find personally for my business, there are lots of things that I can quickly capitalize on and transform a number of products in a different way. And that always excites me and inspires me when I can do something new and creative. And so, you know, suddenly I need this extra time to go, oh, what about this? And I could do this. And what about that? The downside of that, of course, is I also need to land things and become a little bit more organized and coherent. So I needed more space to be able to do those things, to be responsive to the situation I'm in now. And I guess I had previously asked that question, and my brain just woke up and said, I've got an answer for you. There you go.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm always interested in the process of how that happens, but also how people do it and how they know that that's the right thing to do. Because I think with clients, sometimes they feel like they should do something, or you know, they really ought to do something, or those sorts of things, but they don't really want to. You know, that really want to, and they might do it, but not with kind of the right feeling or energy around it. And I think most of us would recognise when something is right when we're doing it, because it's just the right thing to do. But I'm always interested in how people recognise it, because that's such a great learning tool for the next time the question comes up. Are you getting that feeling? What is it you have to do to create that feeling again? What would give you that feeling again? Because that's how you know what the right thing is to do. So I'm always interested in people's strategies, I guess, for doing that, and how the little
it reminds me of, you know, one of the early training activities in an NLP practitioner is finding the submodalities of certainty and uncertainty, and recognizing you know, what they are, those subtle sensory experiences of what it's like to feel both certain and uncertain. Because once you've got those markers in your brain, you've got a reference, haven't you, as you rightly say, and they're really useful little way markers when you're making everyday decisions. And it kind of comes back to which one feels solid, and whatever your particular sensory experience of certainty is. It's like, and I was, for me, there's just like just everything comes down the centre line. I am sure that's it. Flag in the sand.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really sudden and instant, as it was for me on Saturday, and sometimes it is a little bit fluid for a while, and gradually it comes into a solid place.
Yeah. I'm always enthralled by how our subconscious works on that, where you described kind of almost popping the question in. And it, the little men did their whatever they were doing, and out popped the answer. And then learning how to understand that process and then use it for good there's just the wonderful thing about NLP, really, isn't it? Kind of being able to do that, and then following on from that in terms of once you've got that understanding and understanding which parts of that send you off into strive mode and into thrive mode, as we were talking about in Happy Brain. What a gift! Just what a gift for wellness and thrive, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are really important tools and skills for us at any point in life, but particularly now. And it just reminds me of the importance of teaching children how to make good decisions, and how to know that they've made a good decision and a bad decision too. I think bad decisions are really important for us to learn from, and make sure we don't repeat them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So you found this week, as a result of taking some time to come back to sort of stable point. There's a pun in there. You and your horse riding to your stable point. How are those lovely horses? Tell me about what's happening with the horses. You're not riding at the moment, are you?
I'm not riding mine, no. I am doing quite a lot of in-hand work with the young horse that I've got, which is just amazing. I feel no pressure to get on, so we're just spending our time doing lots of groundwork, and I'm helping him to be really brave. And it's fascinating watching their brains work. And you can see it written all over them as they work things out. So I'll just briefly describe, just because now you've asked. Last week, beginning of this week actually, it wasn't last week at all because I was in no state to do it last week. And beginning of this week, I took up a golf umbrella up to the stables, and I took him into the arena and let him have a sniff. And don't know whether he has actually come across an umbrella before, but this is quite bright. And I just spent about half an hour putting the umbrella up, taking it near him, flapping it around a bit, all of those sorts of things, so that he could learn that it wasn't a scary thing. And very much like our brains, there's a really fine line between scaring them and setting them off into, I've got to escape from this mode, whereby you've sort of lost them, really, because you kind of have to wait for them to calm down, wait for the adrenaline to stop rushing around their body, wait for them to come back to center, to start focusing and concentrating again. So actually it's better to keep them a little bit under that, if possible, so that they can learn to manage their own emotions around this scary object, so that when they see another scary object, they don't forget everything that they've done around the umbrella scary object, but they can apply their learning to the new scary object. So that's what we're doing. Life doesn't get any better, really.
So that's building resilience with your horse.
Absolutely.
So you build resilience with your human clients and your equine clients.
Yeah.
And your doggy clients.
Yeah, that's an ongoing job. Because I have two horses. The old horse, I've done this with him for years and years and years. And so now we just play. We just play in the field. And well, I know you've seen some videos of him where he'll just follow me around, and he'll stop and he'll go backwards and he'll turn, and he's just, what are we doing next, Mum, all the time. Whereas my younger horse is he's a bit more, oh, I don't know what that means. So he's a little bit of a work in progress. But, you know, much like us, when we're learning about our brains and how they function at their best, to start with, it's all a bit new, and it's a bit, oh, I don't know how this is working, and our brains are trying to work it out. But once you build those new neural pathways and keep practicing those helpful neural pathways, life just becomes easier, because you've got the tools to answer the questions. Even when the questions are different, you've got the tools to be able to answer them.
Yeah, I love that. And there's such a clear parallel between our work with humans and animals. You mentioned, you know, that you need to keep the emotional regulation just at a certain level to enable something new to come in comfortably, and for their neurology to accept it and process it in simple, easy ways. So that requires you to keep the horse and us to keep our clients in that good state. And I was just thinking about, you know, how we can do that in so many ways, obviously. And often with one-to-one clients, we might just say, okay, so let's just close your eyes. I'm going to just talk you through a little closed eyes relaxation now, just so that you bring your whole self down into a nice state of you know, the right chemistry, so that you can contemplate something new. But you can't really do that with a horse, not linguistically. So what do you do that communicates from you to your horse or horses that they're safe?
It's kind of all in body language and energy levels, and so that's the same as with clients, really. And I think one of the most important things to do, again, it's completely paralleled, to give the horse time to process what you just worked on. Set it up for them to succeed, set it up for them to learn, help them understand that they can manage their own emotions and responses to things, and then stop and give them space. And in stopping, I always, and it is completely in the body language, where if I want him to do something, my energy is up, and it's much more that this is what I want. And when I want him to just reflect, my energy just stops and turns away. So he knows that he's really safe with me, and he knows, because they're herd animals, if the human with them is worried or anxious or on alert, then the horse is saying, hang on a sec, you're supposed to be in charge. And if you're on alert, then that means there must be something to be on alert about. So they are fantastic for helping us as humans learn about our own self-regulation and energy levels and body language and emotions, because, as you know, as you've experienced, they'll tell you it back straight away. And it's quite a responsibility. I find I do feel a huge responsibility when I'm working with animals, to make sure that they're okay. There is definitely that level of responsibility.
So it's such a cool parallel to the work that we do with humans as well, isn't it? And it's much less complicated, because the animals aren't overthinking everything and coming up with, I feel like this because he was really mean to me last week. They don't do that, do they? So,
I often describe it as, for horses, they don't have an ego to get involved. They don't have an I. They're for the team. They're always for the team.
Yeah.
And they're in the moment as well. There's not that they don't have memories, but they're in the moment. So that's much easier to work with as well. Yeah,
And I love the work that you do with horses, and I've experienced it firsthand, and I know that you do amazing equine facilitated development for businesses, for teams, for humans to learn about themselves and their own states alongside the animals. And it's something that I hope we'll be able to introduce into the Happy Brain training at some stage, and because it's just such a beautiful match for everything that we stand for.
Definitely. Good stuff.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, it reminds me, as you were talking, I was remembering a situation I had, which you know about, and in fact, I've probably, I think I wrote about it on social media, where I saw, we were driving past a field one day, and there was a horse galloping around in a field of crops with a saddle slapping underneath it with no rider on it, and the horse was completely crazed and clearly it had thrown its rider, and it was in a state of utter frenzy. So we stopped the car, and I sort of instructed my husband, call the police, stay in the car, I'm going in the field. And I remembered so much of the conversations and work with you and everything I knew about horses and energy and humans. And it's one of those moments where you pull in everything that you know is really important. And I knew that utterly the only thing that mattered was to allow that herd animal to feel safe with me. So in order to do that, I had to be strong and stable and safe.
Yeah.
And as a metaphor for that, just yesterday, in fact, with working with a client, I was reminded of, if I am brought into a family where there's been something really terrible and traumatic happening, the very first thing I do is to stabilize the family. And that usually means finding a single caregiver who is going to have the strongest, most dominant energy, because once they are stable, then that will cascade out, and then we can introduce the changes required to the rest of the family. And indeed, in that field, I just waited and just emitted everything that I could that said, I am safe, I am here when you are ready. And sure enough, it took a while, but sure enough, it came up, and I managed to get it. And it was a very happy ending. But it's, those threads of our work with animals and our work with humans they enrich, I feel they enrich my life as a coach and a trainer, and I know you've expressed the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that example, that story that you just said there, that's absolutely how horses work. Absolutely. They have to be able to trust, and they have such a keen sense of trust. And I think that's exactly the same for our clients, that they have to feel safe. They have to be able to feel that. So however long it takes to get that, it's such an important thing to do before we try and introduce other things. And sometimes I think that's more difficult right now, heavens, I think that's probably all that we're doing right now, just helping to hold that space. But in the world as it was, as we knew it, things happened so quickly. Everybody could do it now. You could order it and it would come tomorrow. The solutions were expected so quickly. I don't know what life's going to be like after, but actually, when you're embarking on some change work, it's not instant. We see many times some aha moments and some real shifts in that, which can happen quite suddenly. But sometimes it has to, as you were describing before, about that, it kind of has to process, it has to percolate, it has to do all those things before the answer or the aha or whatever it is pops out. And I think sometimes that's the hardest part of working with clients, just keeping hold of that for long enough to allow all of that to happen. It's hard work holding that for somebody. Do you find the same?
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say it was hard work. I think I would call it essential work. And I have learned not to be attached to that, because, you know, sometimes we have to let that go if the client isn't ready, or, you know, doesn't get to the place that they want to at the speed that they want to, because we're busy just holding the space to introduce things at a rate and a pace. And I don't know, there's things that are running through my mind right now. Some of our client work can be really super fast, super interventional. You know, you've got 20 minutes and then, you know, the phobia's gone, the fear's removed, the state's changed, and they go out and they're into the world. But sometimes in complex change work, we have to do it a little bit softer and more gently. And I always amuse myself when I hear people say, well, you know, they've been to I don't know, 10 therapists or 10 coaches, and you know, I was the one who did the change work. And I always smile and I think, no, you know, every time there's been a little interaction with somebody, every time somebody else has just held a little bit more of the space, opened another little bit, enables some of those complex changes to reveal themselves at the right pace. And I think that there is a big contrast between, you know, certainly our NLP work is based on fast intervention, but the other kind of coaching or therapeutic, the transformational change work is at a different pace, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember doing the practitioner course with you, and I know you've used it in lots of places since, where you have your little drawstring bag with all the things inside, and the discussion about, you know, this is kind of your brain and everything that's going on in the brain, and just being able to just ease that little drawstring at the top a little bit, just for enough to okay, let's have a look at that. Let's see what that's about. That analogy, I talk to clients about it because it really helps them to be reassured, I think, that we're not going to, you know, I'm not going to leave them in bits before they leave. And it's kind of, you know, it's almost under their control, which I think a lot of people worry about as well. I love that analogy. I think that works really, really well.
And of course, that you know, there is the element of perceived control, but also I love the way that people become surprised and delighted by how good it feels when you relax the drawstring. You know, when you find those calm states where your whole body and mind becomes aligned, and you've got access to that huge, rich bag of resources, i.e. your unconscious mind. That feeling is so rewarding in itself, and the journey inside can be so so exciting.
And that's exactly the process I went through last weekend. Exactly that, to get that fantastic feeling this week. But
Tracey, thank you as always for sharing your insights and wisdoms on the week that was, and I'm so pleased that you are raring to go yet again and bringing lots of wonderful gifts to the world. And I hope that you'll be able to tune in same time next week.
I really enjoyed it. Speak to you soon.
I look forward to speaking to you, Tracey. You take care. Bye bye.
Bye.